What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Bulls Latest. Your host, Matt Johnson here. Going to kick off today's show with some Noah Asenge news. The Bulls have recalled Noah Asenge from the Windy City Club. Now, I'm curious to see what happens next. I'm curious to see if this is just for Thursday's practice, since the Bulls leave for a two-day trip beginning on Friday, and Windy City opens Saturday. Going to be interesting to see what Billy Donovan says here. He did indicate that Asenge needs on-ball game reps. We'll have to keep an eye on this to see what happens for the rookie. I'm certainly optimistic and excited that we're going to see him in action here soon. Even if that's with the Windy City Club, it'll be good to see him get on the floor. It would certainly be awesome if he even got some minutes with the Chicago Bulls until Kobe White comes back. Now, I don't know how he would fit into the rotation currently. That remains to be seen as well, but something to monitor, and I'll get to you guys with more news on that, hopefully for tomorrow's show, on what's next for Noah Asenge. At the least, we should be able to see him in action, with the Windy City Club this weekend. So excited and optimistic about his future and what it holds. Excited to see him get back into things. Wanted to kind of switch gears to a guy who's been in the news for all the wrong reasons lately, and that's Ja Morant. Ja Morant's trade rumors are circulating, and they're continuing to increase following his comments in his post-game press conference, where he basically stated that his joy for basketball is gone, and that he needs to find it again. He was asked if he could find that joy back in the game as a Memphis Grizzly, and he really did not seem optimistic about that at all. Right away, once the trade rumors started circulating, the two teams that jumped at Ja Morant's opportunity, or at the opportunity to talk to Ja Morant's club, and his representatives were the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Sacramento Kings. I'm sure there was another couple of teams in a list of organizations that really wanted and were interested in reaching out to the availability of him. But Minnesota and Sacramento were two names that I've heard early on here. Looking at Ja Morant's season thus far, he was recently suspended one game for conduct detrimental to the team. So his continued turbulence on the court and off it really continues to be an issue, for whatever reason. So we'll see what happens with that situation. And the reason I brought it up, would you guys as Bulls fans want to see him in Chicago? I'd be curious to get your guys' take. Let me know in the comments. Would you want to see Ja Morant in Chicago? Do you want to see the Bulls make a move for him? I know I asked this same question in the offseason, way back when we kind of went into this year, not knowing what the future held for Ja Morant in Memphis. It continues to be uncertain as it looks. So a move is not out of the question, but I don't know if Chicago is on the same page in terms of wanting to make a move for a player like that. That move seems more realistic now, him getting out of Memphis, than it did a few months ago, given that Memphis is off to that rough 3-6 start. What would it take to get Ja Morant is the question. Probably a guy such as Kobe White. Now, on an expiring contract, I don't hate that at all. To be honest, I doubt the Bulls pull the trigger on this. They're really building a solid culture here with the young guys that they do have. You don't want to roll the dice necessarily. If you're the front office size, I know Ja Morant's a hell of a player. He's a heck of a talent. But there's just too much extracurricular stuff that you could risk kind of messing up what you have in terms of a lot of the young guys. So I'd be curious to know, some more on this. I'll look for more information, whether we get some talk on this in terms of the Chicago Bulls relative to Ja Morant. So we'll see what happens. That's definitely a guy to keep an eye on. Obviously, he always seems to be in the news, whether it's for the good or the bad. So keep an eye on Ja Morant and what's going on with him there. Looking at the upcoming schedule here, it's going to be a doozy. The Bulls have a stretch where 6 of the next 7 games are on the road, including the first set of back-to-back games against Eastern Conference powers. You got Bucks and Cavs, like I talked about yesterday in yesterday's show. You go to Milwaukee for that second NBA Cup group stage game, and then you go to Cleveland. The Bulls will head to Cleveland on Saturday as the second of a back-to-back, followed up by a three-game West Coast swing. You got the Utah Jazz in there, and then Denver and Portland. So those are going to be three tough games. I do think they should be able to handle Utah. Denver, obviously, a perennial powerhouse early on here. Portland is a winnable game as well. So the West Coast stretch, I do expect the Bulls to take 2 out of 3 there. However, Portland just handed Oklahoma City their first loss of the season. So Portland is no slouch there. We'll see what happens with them. But Cleveland and Milwaukee, obviously, two tough contests, two of the East's best teams. We'll see what happens there. But it's going to be a fun week ahead of us here, a fun stretch of basketball. We'll see if the Bulls can stay hot. I hope they do. In other words, though, big tests for the Chicago Bulls lie ahead here. I mean, we looked at the Philly game as a big test. The Bulls passed that test in a crazy way. A huge comeback in that one, obviously. So, we'll see what happens in the next week or so with the Bulls. In my eyes, if the Bulls can come out of this stretch 3-2 at a minimum, I think it's a success. I think 4-2 is doable as well, but these are some tough games on the schedule. Hoping for 3-2 at the least in the next 5. We'll keep an eye on that stuff, and we'll preview these games going forward for you guys as we always do. Hoping for 3-2 here in this stretch, keep the ball rolling for this young Bulls team early on in this young season. So wanted to wrap up today's show with the NBA Power Rankings ESPN laid out. The Bulls jump all the way up to 8 in ESPN's latest Power Rankings. They're up 13 spots from the last list. This comes as no surprise. The Bulls are one of, if not the hottest team in the league at the moment. ESPN highlighted the top newcomer for Chicago and Isaac Okoro. When you look at the Bulls as a whole, they brought back nearly their entire roster from last season, added Isaac Okoro to the mix to help build a defensive identity, as we talked about way, way back when the Bulls first traded for him and flip Lonzo Ball to Cleveland there. The defensive identity was the main reason for this move. Chicago entered this week ranked 12th in defense and have truly been one of the surprise teams in the league early on. A lot of fun for Bulls fans in Bulls Nation. I've had a ton of fun covering and watching the first stretch of games here for this Bulls team. And I just think, even with Okoro's struggles, the defense has still been there. Isaac Okoro averaging only 6 points. He's shooting 38.5% from the field and 29.4% from three. He's had just 2 steals in the first 5 or so games here. I know he had 2 steals in the last win over Philly. He actually came off a pretty nice game in the win over Philadelphia, probably his best one so far as a Bull. He scored 16 points there, was one of, I think, 9 guys in double figures, and he had 5 assists as well. So we'll look for continual contributions from the Bulls, one big offseason acquisition moving forward. Hopefully he can grow into a solid role with this team as time goes on here. Looking at the rest of the power rankings there, the Thunder sit atop the list at number 1. The defending champs actually just dropped their first game yesterday to the Portland Trail Blazers. So Oklahoma City no longer the lone undefeated squad in the NBA, but are still a powerhouse nonetheless. The Spurs come in at number 2. They drop a very tight game and an awesome contest at the Lakers last night as well. So the Spurs come in at 2, but still playing great basketball. Nuggets at 3. I looked at when they made those moves for Cam Johnson and such, they were going to be one of the Western Conference's teams to beat, and it certainly looks like they are playing that part early on here. Nikola Jokic looks like he always does, very solid, a leader for that ball club. The Lakers at 4 on this list, a very solid start to the year, even without LeBron James. There was a recent update, I think it came out yesterday. LeBron is looking to ramp up his activity, going to get back in 5-on-5 action, and so hopefully they'll have him back here soon. The Houston Rockets at 5, Philly at 6, and then Cleveland kind of rounding out that list there, before Chicago coming in at 8 there. So you look at the Rockets, it's one of my teams that I picked to win the Western Conference. I think they have a really good shot to get to the NBA Finals with that group. Now, Fred VanVleet, not having him around is a blow. The Lakers are going to be tough to beat. DeAndre Ayton really has come into his own here in the last week or so. Pretty awesome, though, when you look at this list and you see a Sixers team at 7, the Bulls having that comeback win. I know it's super early on. It's way too early to make assumptions on what the East is going to look like. But right now, as it stands, the Chicago Bulls look very much like a playoff team. And I'm not talking a play-in team like they've been the last couple of years. I think this Bulls team has what it takes to get one of those top 6 seeds in the Eastern Conference. I mean, the East is wide open. We've seen that. We've seen how bad teams like the Indiana Pacers have looked without a lot of their guys from last year. So, it's wide open. I mean, the Pacers went to the conference finals last year, losing to the Knicks, and they certainly are out of the picture. The Knicks are going to be a tough team. The Magic are really struggling. I know that was my pick for you guys to come out of the Eastern Conference. They've really looked slow and sluggish coming out of the gate. Again, a lot of basketball to be played, but this Bulls team right now, yes, I do think that they have the ability to get one of those top 6 spots. So we'll see how the weekend shakes out. I want to thank you guys again for joining me on another episode of Bulls Latest. Your continual support of this show goes such a long way. I want you guys to know that. Thank you for my day one supporters. And then want to hear from you guys on things like John Morant and the power rankings and the upcoming schedule. What do you guys predict? What do you want to see out of Noah Senge? Would you rather have him start off with the Windy City Club this weekend? I think that's probably what it's trending towards. Or would you like to see him just jump right into action? I don't think Billy Donovan would do that anyway, but do you want to see him just go right into things with the Bulls and play a role? Anyway, thanks again for joining me, guys, on another episode of Bulls Latest, and we will catch you guys next time.